Hello, and welcome to Magic User History. In my last video, I introduced my argument on why esports should be considered a sport. Now, before I go on with my argument, I want to talk about the history of esports, where it began, how it has changed, and where is it now. Luckily for you guys, I found this little book all about the history of esports. So, without further ado, let us begin and open the first page into the history of esports. Now, the history of esports can be divided into three main eras: the 1970s and 1980s, the 1990s, and the 2000s onwards. I like to refer to these periods as the infancy, the developmental stage, and the exponential stage. So, when did esports begin? Well, if we're talking about the first video game tournament, then it would be on October 19th, 1972, at Stanford University. This tournament hosted the game Space War, where students were invited to an intergalactic space Olympics. Yeah, that's the name they chose for their tournament. Anyways, this tournament had a grand prize of a year's subscription for Rolling Stone. What a huge prize. This tournament was able to attract about 10,000 viewers, which, though it doesn't seem like much today, was monumental at that time when video games were a completely new concept. Since video games were so new and foreign, not many were able to learn about the competitive scene. However, this was slowly changing as websites such as Twin Galaxies helped promote video games and publicize its records, through publications such as the Guinness Book of World Records. Though large tournaments were rare at this time, video games saw a brief spike in popularity as televised esports events aired during this period, such as the American show Starcade. However, this period was a mostly slow period for esports, and showed esports at its earliest, incomplete yet full of potential. One great proponent of esports was the introduction and the development of the internet. As the internet became more efficient and more widespread, esports grew with it. Tournaments became more common and easier to set up, and even the casual player could compete with the introduction of online tournaments. In addition, companies such as Nintendo and Blockbuster started sponsoring tournaments, increasing the prize pool and the scale of these tournaments. This all culminated into the Red Annihilation tournament in 1977 for the Quake game. This drew in about 2,000 participants, which was huge. The winner even got to drive off in Quake's lead developer John Cornack's Ferrari as the grand prize. It is widely regarded as the world's first esports event. One last development was the introduction of StarCraft in 1998, which will later go on to be gigantic in terms of esports. However, esports during this time period was still a far cry from the esports we know and love today. The previous two periods are similar in that though they do share the development of esports, they don't really expand upon the sport-like aspects of esport. Instead of being like a sport, esport in these two time periods were more like organized tournaments, where each player displayed their individual talent in a game. However, this all changed with the turn of the new millennium. Suddenly, esports' slow and steady growth became exponential. South Korea was a huge proponent of esports, supporting StarCraft initially, and eventually expanding into many other games. Esports in that region soon became as important, if not more important than their physical sports. Many organizations, such as the World Cyber Games and the Electronic Sports World Cup were launched, followed by the Major League Gaming, propelling the popularity of video game tournaments. Another huge boost was the creation of the MOBA genre, which allowed for esports to bloom, as games such as Dota 2 and League of Legends quickly became the biggest names in esports due to their simplistic nature but complicated mechanics. It was easy to learn but hard to master, a perfect combination to develop loyalty and dedication, requirements for a game to become a successful esport. All of a sudden, esports wasn't just a hobby, it became a lifestyle. Esport houses were created for big teams and prize pools increased exponentially. Tournament viewer counts went from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions and even tens of millions. Big esports athletes got coaches to teach them how to improve more effectively and chefs to cook for them. They got visas from the government to help them move internationally, and they got paid a salary, allowing them to have esports as their profession. More and more games saw the potential of esports and started jumping on the bandwagon, creating their own esport leagues. This growth is continuing even today, and doesn't seem to be slowing down. Just last year, Dota 2 broke prize pool records with their 34 million The International 2019 tournament, and League of Legends broke viewership records with their 42 million concurrent viewers for the World's 2019 finals. Outside of esports, League of Legends has gotten so big that there are now over 100 million players in the Chinese server alone, about 1/3 of the entire United States population playing just that one game. Talk about big. Overall, the history of esports isn't very long. There has only been less than 50 years since the first small tournament in Stanford University. However, in the short time, esports has developed into a $500 million idea that doesn't seem to be slowing down. As esports grows more and more and becomes less of a pastime and more of a viable career, we have to once again ask ourselves, should we consider esports a sport? Well, whether we think so or think not, we can all agree on one thing. Esports has kind of become a big deal.
Broadcasting jobs, training jobs, sports psychologists, all of those career paths that reside in traditional sports are now being bridged together between traditional and esports, and we're starting to see now there is really no difference.
Hey, Rick.
From the